Welcome to another episode. I'm here with Elijah, who has become my de facto co-host, whether he wants to or not. And that actually is a good segue to the topic of this episode, which is actually about emotional labor. So, I talk so much about having work you love, and all these other things. And there's a huge segment of work that hardly ever gets acknowledged, and that is emotional labor. So it's actually Elijah who brought that up for me because I've been in the process of finishing a book. And as you can imagine, that includes a lot of emotional stuff that you're going through, or late nights and just general, maybe higher stress levels than usual. And at some point, Elijah just mentioned, you know what, the book has your name on it. But if I hadn't been so calm and patient with you, you wouldn't have been able to create that. So yeah, how was that for you?
It was interesting in that I didn't necessarily know what I was getting myself into. I had some suspicions. This book that was going to be so easy to write would have some periods where late nights, emotional discomfort, and so forth. And so, I was thinking about it in the context. Usually, you hear emotional labor for women basically doing childcare, cooking, a lot of these other things that are not.
But also in firms, though, a lot of
yeah, like doing emotional things that they're not acknowledged for.
Yeah.
So it had me turn around and think when either of us is stepping forward with our own businesses, the other person's often doing emotional labor because it's just it takes some emotional energy for the person stepping forward to do it. And often we need someone to lean on and support us.
Yeah, and we're actually just finishing up a course on relationships that we're facilitating. And we also brought up this topic of emotional labor, and it was actually very resonant for a lot of people because, and I think it's not only in romantic relationships, it's in any type of relationship. I mean, if I look at some, whether that's friendship or family, there's often a lot of emotional labor. And yeah, so I guess maybe we could see if we could develop a theory around that. When is emotional labor healthy? When is it unhealthy? Kind of what are the boundaries?
I think the first step is just acknowledging that's happening.
Yeah,
hey, when I'm gonna do something on my website or whatever, I need to be aware that most likely it's going to impact her as well. It's not just me allocating my time and
energy. Right. Of course, if I'm doing something, I'm perfectly capable of doing it all by myself, and I don't need any support.
Oh. So I'll remember that.
It's kind of hard to say I never said that if it's caught on video, but yeah. So acknowledge that it's happening. So I think that's a really important step. I think also kind of giving the other person appreciation for what they're doing, right? This actually reminds me that I should probably reach out to my parents because it's probably our parents who've done the biggest emotional labor ever in terms of getting us to a place where we're functional adults. So it's a good reminder also for the holidays and so on and so forth. Yeah, and because one thing that I've learned is that people really crave being acknowledged. And that is, can be a really simple exercise. So one thing we did during our course is basically, hey, can you tell me one thing that you'd like to be acknowledged for? So, I mean, if I asked you now, is there something that you would like me to acknowledge you for? Not to put you on the spot, but totally to put you on the spot.
Well, I think one thing would I think we already talked about just how I've been in some ways supporting you with having the book go through, and I'm really excited about it, but it's nice to be acknowledged for having done that for you.
Yeah, so I just really want to acknowledge you for how you helped me with that. Thank you. And in my case, I actually, in the what I love about books is that you actually get to write an acknowledgement section, basically thank everybody, because without them, that book wouldn't exist. And in terms of other projects, we often don't have that. So you kind of like almost need to make your own acknowledgement section, and then kind of like start a process of reaching out to everybody from like the intern to, I don't know, your therapist or something, thanking them for the role they played.
Yeah, it's from the side of someone providing the emotional labor. It can also be really fantastic. It can be a chance to be loving, to be supportive, to grow yourself, to be connected to someone and some things that you really care about. So while it is, it does take effort, and there are times when it can be hard, like really hard, there's also times it can be really sweet, and it can be really, really nice to be in service in this way.
Yeah, and I think the question is, does it feel good or not? Because once it stops feeling good, then it's really important to bring that up. So there's a difference between giving and overgiving, and giving feels super joyous. I think as humans, we just really want to be in service of others, and it's one of the ways where how we derive meaning from life. And overgiving actually doesn't feel good. So overgiving is sort of like as soon as, I would, let's say, feel resentful for how much I'm supporting Elijah, that would be a sign that I'm in overgiving and not in giving.
And sometimes just being appreciated a bit can switch it from overgiving to giving.
Yeah.
Because if we're giving a lot and it's not being, there's not kind of like appreciation coming back or some acknowledgement, it's easier to get into like, wait a minute, So I think that's really helpful.
Yeah. So do you have any other thoughts that you think would be helpful to share?
Well, I think this is, a good start to a topic that is, I believe, very highly talked about in some areas, and in other areas like supporting entrepreneurial activities and emergence of new things and books. I think it could be, really be talked about more.
Yeah, which reminds me of a course I once saw, which was something about like how to be an entrepreneur and not get divorced. So there's clearly a need for that, and it's not only entrepreneurs. I think I know a lot of people who are employed but have super stressful jobs, and I guess I've also been in a situation where I was under a lot of pressure as not as an entrepreneur. And where it was really helpful to have somebody to emotionally support me. So I guess to summarize that...
Can I say one thing about that too? Well, I think that there's stress. There's if you have to travel a lot for your work, if you're living somewhere that's maybe different from where you or your partner might want to live. It's just really helpful to, when you're considering about how your job is going, to really look at also some of the strains and things that can happen to people around you who are enabling you to be doing what you're doing, if it's having a real, a lot of a toll in that way.
Yeah, so to summarize that, in terms of emotional labor, it's really important to, first of all, really acknowledge that it's happening. And if you're the person who's receiving more emotional labor at the moment, it's really helpful to acknowledge people for what they're doing and appreciate them, and that can go a long way. If you're the person who's doing a lot of emotional labor, you can check if you're feeling like you're giving or overgiving. And the question is, does it feel good? If it feels good, then you're giving and it's fine. Just continue, it's fun. If not, it might be time to have a conversation about boundaries. And yeah, ultimately, we're all standing on the shoulders of giants and...
our ancestors.
Yeah, so, and there are few things people do that they do just by themselves, so acknowledging that and making it visible is really important. And I guess the idea that every project could use an acknowledgement section, not just books, is maybe a good place to start. Mm-hmm. So we'd love to hear your thoughts. Please leave us a comment, what you're thinking about this, maybe how it's showing up in your life, and we'd love to continue this conversation with you. Okay. Bye.